feeds your mind and grows your spirit. To all of you who are joining us on Facebook this morning, welcome. Keep an eye out on your weekly email for updates on our ongoing reopening, as well as how to access our service online each week. My name is Caroline Nixon, and I am the worship associate this morning. Be you a spiritual seeker, an atheist, or a theist, whether you find inspiration in the great books, or the great outdoors, or great conversations, all are welcome in this inclusive congregation. To newcomers and old friends both, together we say, welcome. A special thanks to our volunteers and staff this morning, our AV team, Janelle Weaver, Kim and Eric Hart, and Pastoral Care Associate, Melissa Trask, as well as our staff, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Nikki Kennedy, pianist, Yuki Kumamoto, sexton, Jean McKeon, and our office administrator, Don McGee. As most of you are aware, our board made a tough but necessary decision to close in-person services for at least the month of January. Tarrant County is once again under the extremely high-risk conditions for the spread of COVID-19. And while we miss gathering in person, we know that this is the safest path forward at this time. We will keep communicating with you about when we can reopen for in-person services, and we'll make announcements on Sunday mornings and send emails as we know more. Our guest speaker in the pulpit today is the Reverend Dr. Susan Rak. She has been a Unitarian Universalist since the early 1970s and a UU minister since 1996. She earned her Masters of Divinity at Lancaster Theological Seminary in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and received a Doctor of Ministry from Meadville-Lombard Theological School in Chicago. Reverend Susan has served our faith as interim and settled minister in the greater New York and Philadelphia area. She also was the UUA Program Consultant for the Joseph Priestley District from 1997 to 2001, and prior to that, worked as a UU religious educator for 15 years. Reverend Susan continues her volunteer work in support of Unitarian Universalism by serving as the president of the UU Retired Ministers and Partners Association. She and her spouse, Dr. Mary Chinnery, who's the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences at Gregorian Court University in Lakewood, New Jersey, reside in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Please make yourself comfortable during the service. Sit or stand, rock, wiggle, or be quiet as a church mouse, but virtually gather close as we listen to this morning's prelude. Our opening words were written by our guest in the pulpit this morning, the Reverend Dr. Susan Rak. We invite you to enter this virtual space. Come into this community. with the click of a mouse or the arc of a cursor, come in now. Bring your whole self here, settle into your seat, wherever that may be. Whatever trouble or worry dogs you, it's there with you. Let it settle down at your feet. Come in, arrive. Be here now. Come in and let your heart open. Perhaps a new light will shine. Perhaps a new beauty will make itself known to you, and perhaps to you alone. Come in. Let any joy and gratitude you have felt this past week, or just this morning, be here with you. Let it settle in your heart and in your mind. You have arrived. We are here. Beloved community in the making. Our opening hymn this morning is number 360. Here we have gathered, performed by Gerald Brown and Jonathan Long of the Community Church of New York, Unitarian Universalist.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of a lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
A flame within a chalice, a cup with a stem and a foot. This represents the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA, and is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice is a symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this church today. If you have a chalice with you at home, please light it with me. Our chalice words come from the UUA's Our Whole Lives program manager, Melanie Davis. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love. Ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. Our chalice lighting song is Be the Light by the talented Leah Morris. This morning's version is sung by the McMinnville Women's Choir and the Women's Choir of Corvallis.
There's always a light when we're ready to see it. There's always a light when we're ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. Shine your light in the dawn, we're ready to see it. Shine your light in the dawn, we're ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always shine your light, there's always dawn, we're ready to see it. Shine your light, there's always dawn, we're ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always shine, there's always dawn, we're ready to see it. Shine your light, there's always dawn, we're ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, shine your light, to climb this hill, together we will. It shines, it shines, shine your light, it shine, be the shine.
Join me in reciting our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. Time for all ages will be presented today by our DLRE, Nikki Kennedy.
Once upon a time, there was a drop of water named Higgins. Higgins was no ordinary drop of water. He was a drop with a dream. Higgins lived in a valley where it had not rained in a very long time. So all the lovely green grass was turning brown, and all the beautiful flowers were wilting, and all the trees were starting to droop. Higgins had a dream that one day the valley would be a beautiful place again. But what could he do? After all, he was only a drop of water. One day Higgins decided to travel and tell others about his dream. All the other drops listened very politely, but no one believed that his dream would come true. "Higgins," said one, "get your head out of the clouds. You can't spend your whole life dreaming." Higgins decided that he had to do something to make his dream come true. So he began to think and think and think. And one day, as he was walking by a rusty old bucket, he got an idea. If enough of us drops of water get together in this bucket, Higgins thought, there would be enough water to sprinkle on a few flowers to help them grow and become beautiful again. Eagerly, Higgins told everyone his great idea, but everyone thought he was being foolish. "Higgins is nothing but a dreamer," they said. Higgins decided that he had to do something to convince the others that he was right. So he said to them, "I don't know about you, but I'm getting into the bucket, and I hope some of you will join me. Then there might be enough water to help at least some flowers grow beautiful again. So Higgins ran as hard as he could and hopped way up in the air and landed with a kerplunk in the bottom of the bucket. And there he sat, just a drop and a bucket. For a long time, Higgins was very lonely. It seemed like no one else was going to join him. But after a while, some of the other drops could see that the grass was dying, and the flowers were wilting, and the trees were drooping. They all agreed that something must be done. Suddenly, one drop shouted, "I'm going in the bucket with Higgins." And he leaped through the air and landed kerplunk in the bucket. Then two other drops yelled, "Wait for us!" And they hopped through the air and landed in the bucket. Then 10 drops jumped through the air into the bucket, then 30, then 50, then hundreds of drops came from all around just to hop into the bucket. Soon, the bucket was completely full of water, but there was still more drops that wanted to join. So they found another bucket and hopped in. And before long, there were 2 buckets of water, then 3, then 4, then 10, then hundreds, and then thousands of buckets of water. Along came a powerful breeze that blew over all the buckets. And all the water flowed together to make a mighty stream. Flowers bloomed, and the trees stood tall and straight once more. All of this happened because Higgins had a dream, and his dream came true. Because he knew that although he was just a drop in a bucket, enough drops in the bucket make a bucket full. And when there are enough buckets with the wind behind them, then justice will roll down like waters and righteousness of a mighty stream.
I sure hope you enjoyed that story as much as we did. You know, I think it's pretty wonderful that Higgins not only shared their dream, but Higgins made that dream come true. Now I know you aren't a drop of water, but I wonder how you can make your dreams come true and help make a difference in this world by living your life with intention.
Morning. In our community here at Westside, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters. Submit your joys and concerns to the team by emailing us at pastoralcare@westsideu.org or contacting any member of the team. We share our concerns and sorrows with one another today, knowing that concerns and sorrows come into each person's life, knowing that we offer comfort. Today our concern is by Ms. Cindy Fountain. It says, Texas elected officials have given the okay for school boards and public libraries to instill book ban, which is antithetical to democracy. We also share our joys with one another, knowing too that joy comes into all of our lives, knowing that together our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. And joy, we also have a joy from Cindy Fountain, and the joy is that Granbury School Board has removed many books for review. Brave students have stood up and are speaking out for truth and democracy. We also have a joy from Janelle. And she said, I got to give my employees their bonuses this week. It's the best week of the year. We also have a joy from Nikki Kennedy. celebrated another trip around the sun this week. And a joy from Carolyn Nixon. She had decided to return to school for another degree, this time in nursing, and this week completed 2 intake exams. Not every joy or concern can be shared openly in community, and some must be shared eye to eye, or simply held in the heart. We further recognize that some do not have voices in which to speak the depth of the pain or the height of their celebration. We make space each week for musical centering, knowing the life and experience of every person matters, and together our life
As we hold all the joys and concerns among us, those both spoken and unspoken, let us center to Spirit of Life by Carolyn McDade, performed by the GW Vibes. I invite you to relax your mind and body and join in a time of meditation. It will begin with a pastoral introduction before we move into silence. Our Tibetan prayer bowl will sound to signal the start of your own meditation, prayer, or reflection. And it will sound again at the end. Our pastoral introduction today will be led by Reverend Susan.
I invite us into a few moments of reflection and meditation. As we focus on our breaths together, may we find calm and peace and open our minds to these thoughtful words from Unitarian Universalist Minister Teresa Enes Soto. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath the foundations of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star, and to truth, that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream. And by covenant, and the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home. May our journey together be one of peace. Blessed be, and Amen.
The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to divine by acts of creation and compassion. In the spirit of generosity, Westside chooses to reach out to our wider community. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its ministries. Beginning today and throughout the year, on the 5th Sundays of the month, we have an opportunity to address our future childcare needs here at Westside, until such a time when we can add childcare positions back into our annual church budget. Investing in a safe and loving space for our youngest Westsiders allows their caregivers to participate more fully in adult enrichment. Compensating trained workers for childcare is one way to show our workers and our families that they are valued and a part of the rich tapestry of Westside Union. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received through the Vanco mobile app, our church website, or a check by mail. for putting into practice that spiritual virtue of generosity. Our giving connects us to the wider web of our community. Reverend Susan selected this morning's reading for me to read. When it's over, we'll hear her reflection on hope versus optimism. This reading, entitled simply Hope, is by the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison, perhaps inspired by Greta Thunberg's quote, "Once we start to act, hope is everywhere." We got it wrong, always looking first for hope, for motivation, inspiration. Only the desperate bearing witness to the beginning of the end can find a new way of being, a way to live within the magnitude of loss and the certainty of destruction. And by so doing, they bring the next world into being, the one that survives despite resurrection being impossible. And so many of our habits, irredeemable from here on. Only by ignoring the obvious outcomes can we become ready for what is so rare we can only call it a miracle. Hope is an obstacle, a barrier that keeps us from needing the new enough to become it. Hope obscures the truth we need if we are going to embrace the extinction of excess, understand the necessity that nothing will ever be the same, nothing of this world can remain. The hope we need is on the other side of all we believe to be true. Hope broken out of cages and prisons and carbon sequestration. Hope that has broken our rib cages and sternums in order to get us free. Hope that will always risk dying in order to survive. Once we act, hope is everywhere.
The word hope is grounded in persistence and expectation, and yes, optimism. We know that pessimism is not a source of hope unless you follow the old adage, hope for the best, expect the worst. Although hope and optimism are similar states of being, there's a real difference between them. Václav Havel, playwright, essayist, statesman, and human rights activist, wrote this about hope. Hope is a state of mind, not the state of the world. Either we have hope within us or we don't. Hope is not a prognostication, it's an orientation of the spirit. You can't delegate that to anyone else. Hope is definitely not the same as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it will turn out. It is hope above all that gives us strength to live and to continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. In the face of this absurdity, life is too precious a thing to permit its devaluation by living pointlessly, emptily, without meaning, without love, and finally, without hope. This hope is a very different experience for each of us. We are all trying to work past the frustration and pain that we may feel to a place of centeredness. We persevere so we can give something deep within wings, something like hope. This is not some great triumphant feeling that we're going to have, something heralded by fanfares and cheering crowds. Under the weight of profound suffering, hope can look just like getting out of bed, getting dressed, or simply showing up. Because the reality is that one person's ordinary routine can be another's triumph. And that is where we find hope. Educator David Henderson, a facilitator in Parker Palmer's Courage and Renewal work, wrote that optimism claims everything will be all right despite reality. Hope accepts reality, that poverty of spirit that underlies all fear, that instigates all tragedies, bureaucracy, and institutional inertia. Accepting that kind of reality, to be a person of hope, requires that we rely on the capacity of the human heart, trusting that our hearts are bigger and stronger, metaphorically speaking, than we might know, strong enough to face what the world throws at us, durable enough to confront all that is not life-giving or love-enhancing. Optimism, insisting that everything will be all right, can easily get crushed by the realities we face. And then we just might give up. This happens over and over again, both in our personal lives and throughout history. Henderson continues his contrast of optimism versus hope this way. Optimism depends on the world's dark realities relenting. They will not. Optimism requires externals to work themselves out. They will not. Hope, on the other hand, doesn't ignore external realities. It simply knows the human heart's capacity to withstand these realities, and it trusts in the inexhaustible power of our hearts to choose love over fear. That is hope. Just look around at all that is happening, good and bad. The virus and the conflicts around what to do about it or how to move back to whatever it is that's called normal. The gridlock in our government that is holding back meaningful change. And the reality that these things might have a positive effect on people's lives while our democracy hangs in the balance. It sounds pretty awful. And hope is the key to facing this. We cannot just tell ourselves it will get better by and by. We are called to trust hope, to anchor it in our hearts and minds, to realize that it is bigger than those awful realities, and at the same time recognize how much persistence and patience and courage are required to bring it forth. Hope means that we are able to awaken ourselves to the pain of others, even as we know and feel our own pain. In the depth of that pain, we will act anyway, believing it can be otherwise, sometimes even despite evidence that might tell us something different. We all carry knowledge of grief, of hunger, loss, hardship, struggle, and pain. We carry awareness of and feel connected to people known and unknown to us who live unloved and uncared for. And we carry our own unmet expectations and needs as well. We try to face all this. We live in a world of harsh inequalities. Violence is a part of the daily mix in some lives where fear abides. But fear abides alongside courage and compassion. For there is hope. We face discouragement and disappointment on a daily basis sometimes. All of us, each and every one of us, has been touched by sorrow, burdened with grief, paralyzed by fear, challenged by adversities big and small. Yet here we are. We don't give up. We haven't given up. Not totally. We hold on. Sometimes it's just by a slender thread or just a shred of positive thinking, but we hold on. Because hope does not allow despair to get the upper hand. Hope gives us the power to be awake to both the beauty and the tragedy in this world. Hopeful people can see the complexity of the situation, can acknowledge the difficulty, the sorrow, the improper and the immoral, and the sometimes awfulness of life. We can acknowledge this, recognize it, and choose to go on, to act anyway, to love anyway, to be vulnerable anyway. They see a ray of optimism, of possibility, and that keeps us going on. Because hope isn't magic. And optimism isn't oblivion. Both are founded in reality. Hope requires a plan, and optimism helps us make those plans. Hope is part of our makeup. It is what helps us to get through the tough times, the agonizing difficulties, the most fearsome events, the most haunting or frightening nightmares. It can be the thing that propels you out of bed in the morning, or keeps you showing up over and over again to do the work that needs to be done. Even when there are cries from the sidelines, or whispers or shouts deep inside you, telling you that this is never going to work, that it isn't worth your while. Yet hope says, keep going. Hope is insistent and also evasive. It is persistent and sometimes elusive. So, what gives us hope? I am not sure that that is the right question, because I don't think we can count on hope being doled out like some special treat. When we're feeling particularly vulnerable or challenged or fearful, we can't just look up to the hills for hope to come down to us on a ray of godly sunshine. To be hopeful people, we must work at this. And here are 3 things we can do to develop and strengthen ourselves as a people of hope. The first is to start where you are and take one step at a time. Begin the journey where that first step, wherever you find yourself at this moment. Do the good you can, realizing, of course, that there is more to do, but don't let that stop you. At least make a start. Cultivate a spiritual practice. Being centered and mindful of some larger whole and feeling connected to the limitless spirit of life and love, these are essential aspects of being a person of hope. Whether you do meditation or mindfulness practices, or you've developed a rich prayer life, or you have found ways of connecting your spirit to the larger good through pursuits like gardening or hiking or baking or the arts or music, cultivating these practices that connect us to life outside our busy brains and worried hearts is absolutely essential. And third, whatever you do, don't make the journey alone. It seems I'm saying this all the time still, and maybe it's because of this pandemic that it's brought it all into hyper-focus, but we need one another. We need our communities. However we shape them these days, we need them more than ever. And we must always remember that we are not alone. We need companions for the journey of hope. Family, friends, comrades, lovers. There are times when it's necessary for us to retreat and do our personal spiritual work. But we need others. These last 20 months have forced most of us into some kind of involuntary retreat, perhaps, at some time or other. But the journey toward becoming people of hope can't be made alone. Reverend David Eaton, the first African-American senior minister in our Unitarian Universalist Association, says that the primary purpose of our congregations is to help people discover, create, and maintain hope in their lives. When people have no hope, they discover hope together. When they cannot discover hope, they create hope together. This morning's meditation words and reading came from contemporary Unitarian Universalist ministers whose work embodies that hope. Their work is centered on justice making and expanding love and inclusion beyond one small community, calling all of us onward into a renewed world of justice, compassion, and courage. And I will close with one more voice from contemporary life that is calling us together and calling us to hope. And this is from Shoshana Zuboff, who wrote a book called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, The Fight for a Human Future in a New Frontier of Power. And it's a pretty heavy title, but her words zero in on where we find ourselves now. Too many of us fall into numb passivity, she writes. My hope is the resurrection of hope itself. After all, what is hope but the deepest conviction that the future can be better than the present. As technological power grows and democracy stumbles, too many of us fall into numb passivity. We trade hope for resignation and succumb to the propaganda of inevitability. But the present is never a good predictor of what may come. Hope thrives on the knowledge that we make the future. Each life is a testament to this wild miracle. We begin, we falter, we begin again. My friends, it is a hopeful joy to be part of that journey with you, to be part of this wild miracle together. We begin, we falter, we begin again. Amen and blessed be.
Our closing hymn today is number 118, This Little Light of Mine, performed by the Unitarian Universalist Church, Utica.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, oh, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, let it shine. Building up a building that world, let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. 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 Let it shine.
Let us go forth into the world through a door of hope for the future, remembering these words by Martin Luther. Even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. So may it be with us. The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world. Join me in the congregational closing. Let us go in peace, believe in peace, and create peace in our lives and in the world. That ends our formal service, but we have another opportunity to be in community with one another. Join our virtual coffee hour on Zoom until 12:30 this afternoon. The link is in the email sent this morning from Westside UU Church. If you are not on our mailing list, please visit westsideu.org and sign up by clicking on the link at the very bottom of the page. Thank you again to the Reverend Dr. Susan Rak for her reflection this morning, and thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful week and be safe.